Please welcome to the stage Michelle Giuda, Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs at the U.S. Department of State.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. So, my global public affairs and public diplomacy team at the U.S. State Department has thousands of officers all across the world engaging the public in some of the most critical and pressing diplomatic and geopolitical issues of our time. And I want to talk to you today about one of those critical issues, and it's been a part of the conversation for much of the day here at Concordia. And that is the role of technology in our lives, and whether technology is going to be a tool to help fuel individual liberty and individual freedom, or if it's something that we're going to let erode our freedoms and oppress our individual liberty. But before I do that, some of you may be wondering, what is public diplomacy? And it's a simple idea. It's engaging public and people and citizens and society in diplomatic conversations. Because we know that diplomacy isn't just government-to-government conversations anymore. The world is too transparent and too interconnected. We have to have people at the center of the conversation that we're having in many of the most important issues of our time. And so how are we doing this? Just a quick snapshot at the State Department of how we're executing public diplomacy across the world. We've got public affairs teams in 185 US missions across the world. We've got 6 international media hubs in Brussels, Dubai, Johannesburg, London, Manila, Miami. So we're in all the major regions, major media markets, engaging with foreign media and foreign audiences 24/7. And that's because we know, especially traditional media, is still important in many areas of the world where digital hasn't yet penetrated to the degree that it has here. And so we're engaging in all types of ways to reach audiences on important issues. Digitally, we have more than 80 million fans and followers and subscribers that we're having online conversations with on social media, on digital media, and engaging in real time, talking about our values and the values that we share with our audiences. We have 650 American spaces. And if you haven't been to an American space, it's a public venue, and we have 650 of them across the world, but it's a place for us to meet and have people-to-people interactions across foreign countries. So we're talking about English language training. We help them think about education and how they can come work in the United States. We have speakers from the United States go to American spaces. But it's a really good way for us to have people-to-people engagement in a digital world where human interaction matters more than ever. And then finally, our exchanges at the State Department. We have educational exchanges, cultural, professional exchanges. Many of you have probably heard of or participated in the Fulbright program. But we're building long-term relationships and generational relationships with people all across the world to help further America's values and the values that we share with them. So much so that approximately 1/3 of current world leaders is an alumnus of a US exchange program. So we're executing public diplomacy and engaging all across the world. And one of the issues that's most top of mind for us is this question about the role of technology in our lives. Is it going to be a tool for us to empower and fuel a new era of individual liberty and independence? Or is it going to be a tool that we let erode our individual freedoms? This is the question of our time. And we know technology is becoming a lot more core to all parts of our lives. There's talk now about the Internet of Bodies. So we're past the Internet of Things, and now starting to think about how smart devices are going to be implanted inside of our bodies to help with certain health benefits. You had thousands of people I saw in the news in Sweden implanting microchips in their wrist or their hands, not just for health benefits, but to manage social media profiles and manage contacts, right? So there's nanobots in our bloodstream, digital pills. So there could be tremendous health benefits, but it also draws into question new areas of privacy and concern about monitoring. I mean, if you're afraid of your email getting hacked, what about your bloodstream? We've heard about the social credit score system in China, this mass Orwellian surveillance system being rolled out with the premise of controlling almost every aspect of human life. Again, we have to ask ourselves the question, is technology helping to empower and fuel individual freedom, or is it eroding it? And all of us are having billions and billions of conversations online through peer-to-peer messaging on our mobile phones. Chatbots are now becoming more automated and integrated into that process. So they're mimicking humans, they're communicating in multiple languages. Is this going to be a tool that we can use to help fuel truth and access to information across the world like never before? Or is this going to help accelerate misinformation and propaganda? Again, is this for good or is it for bad? And so this brings me back to the public diplomacy imperative, this question about technology. And our focus from public diplomacy is twofold. One, on making sure that technology is empowering individuals, citizens, members of society, and the public. And secondly, bringing awareness to this issue that all of us have to be at the center of. It has to be a whole-of-nation conversation. It can't just be governments deciding. It can't just be businesses in the private sector and tech companies deciding. It has to be the people. And so I'll give you an idea of a few ways that we're helping to deliver on this at the State Department and beyond. We're hosting tech camps across the world. So this is where we bring technologists and digital experts and trainers together with civil society leaders to help empower their citizens, promote freedom of expression, freedom of information. Here's an example in the Gambia in 2016, where we helped connect them with digital technologists and fueled hundreds of thousands of youth voter turnout in their 2016 presidential election. That campaign, #GambiaParticipates, is now an established nonprofit, and they have a mobile app. They're continuing to engage citizens with the government. There's a platform called Follow the Money, which helps track the use of public funds so that citizens can find out where the government is spending. So here, a really good example of how technology is helping to fuel transparency and fuel civic engagement. In 2012, Radio Free Asia, which is a part of the US Agency for Global Media, developed the Open Technology Fund. And the purpose there was to make sure that we're bringing tools and products to people to help give them safe and inclusive access to global communications networks. And so today they estimate, the US Agency for Global Media, that about 2 billion users are making use of the technology that they've helped fuel and develop through the Open Technology Fund. That means users can circumvent surveillance, they can circumvent firewalls, they can avoid censorship online, they can avoid surveillance online. So they have access to free and open media that they otherwise couldn't because of technology. And then lastly, in May of earlier this year, the Czech Republic convened in Prague 30 countries from across the world, the United States was one of them, to come together and think about the critical consideration set when it comes to 5G adoption across the world. And they came together and they agreed that, in addition to the economic considerations, the commercial considerations, that national security had to be at the center of the conversation about 5G adoption and who the trusted vendors are. And so the resulting Prague proposals have codified that and have provided a really smart and helpful framework for thinking about all the important considerations, especially national security, when it comes to 5G adoption. And I know 5G has been a big part of the conversation here at Concordia today as well. So this brings me back to my focus here today, and that's you. And I want to make sure that every single one of you understands the critical role that you play in deciding proactively and deliberately the path that we're going to take and the role that we're going to let technology play in our lives. Is it going to fuel and empower our individual freedom, or are we going to let it erode it? We have to act, we have to engage, we have to educate ourselves and others, and we have to make sure that our interests and our rights are represented as technology continues to expand even more deeply into every part of our life. The Advisory Commission on Public Diplomacy is a federal commission. It's in charge of looking at and assessing the public diplomacy efforts across the US government. And so I'm really excited to announce at Concordia today that we're going to be working with the ACPD to explore and convene and bring business and academic and policy leaders and civil society leaders together. This really critical intersection between emerging technology, individual liberty, and public diplomacy, and the role that public diplomacy can play in making sure that citizens are at the center of this conversation when it comes to the role of technology in our lives. And so I hope today that my takeaway for you is how critical your individual role is in making sure that we decide this future for ourselves, that technology helps fuel individual liberty, not erode it, and that a new era of technology helps lead to a new era of individual freedom. Thank you.